a lot of folks will sometimes look at their first win where they were given permission to become themselves. And when I look at my life and what led me to here, you got to look at what was the pivotal moments.
You found the Live Local Marketing Podcast, where business owners share their knowledge about what's working in the market today. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here for the Live Local Marketing Podcast. Today we're with Steve. Sir, how are we feeling today?
I'm feeling great. I'm happy, rested, and warm.
That is the key. You do have the big mountain man type beard. You do have that outdoorsy look. That's pretty nice. It takes time to grow a beard out like that. I'm impressed.
Well, I trimmed it down actually for the podcast. It was significantly
Nice.
longer when I was ice climbing last week.
Ice climbing. All right. So let's get into your background, because you have a fascinating background, which explains the ice climbing comment. So Mark is a business builder, a go-to market strategist, a mountaineer. I said that right. Who's summited Everest and scaled companies under pressure. As president of the Roadmap Agency and CEO of Boombright, you help B2B businesses teams build the systems they need to grow with clarity and confidence. With over 25 years experience leading revenue operations and advising across industries like manufacturing, retail, and agricultural, you focus on the practical, aligned execution and the measurable practical results. So this is going to be good because you have quite an eclectic background. So this will be a very fascinating topic. Are you ready for the first question, sir?
I am.
All right, let's get to this. What would you consider to be your first win?
That's an interesting question, because a lot of folks will sometimes look at their first win where they were given permission to become themselves. And when I look at my life and what led me to here, you got to look at what was the pivotal moments. And so I grew up in northern Manitoba and had a very, very outdoor life. Like, in fact, probably the first half of my life up to the age of 16 was spent without running water and electricity out in the wilderness, pulling fish nets, trapping, that sort of stuff, right? So then when I moved to Alberta, it was no surprise that I got into mountaineering. So when I look at the trajectory of my life, I would say my first win was when I did my first summit, which was Crow's Nest Mountain. And I was asked by a bishop in the Mormon church to help him lead some of his flock up a mountain, because he knew I was an outdoorsy guy. And it turned out that they couldn't summit, and so I took the kids to the summit, and I got hooked. And that has led to decades of spending time in the mountains, which I would say the ultimate end of it, and Pico, is when I led a team to the top of Everest as the lead climber. So what does that do with business? What that does is it gives you a sense of possibility. It allows you to understand that you can do hard things, and it really reinforces the power of team, because when you're leading in the mountains, it's life or death, and the importance of who you pick as your teammates determines whether you're coming back or not. And you carry that into your work-life balance. Who you pick, who you surround yourself with, will dictate the outcomes of your life. So those are the kind of lessons I take from mountaineering and alpinism, and I bring it into my everyday life. And so that would be my first win, which was my first mountain back in my 20s, many, many, many years ago, as you can tell from the gray in my beard.
I can relate to the gray in the beard. Do you track the number of mountains you've done? Like, do you know how many you've hit up? And
yeah, I've attempted over 64-ish, and I've summited 56 now to date. So there's a few that I didn't hit, and I had to go back a bunch of times to get some. So that's why there's been more attempts than summits.
Wow, that's impressive. All right, so we're shifting gears a little bit back to the business side of it. I want to change the next question. I want to talk to you about data. With such an eclectic background, when I say the word effective data, what comes to mind for you?
So when you're looking at your business, you need to look at what are the fundamentals that I need to know about in order to drive my business forward. So we say, like, first you have to understand your customer acquisition cost. And when you understand your customer acquisition cost, you can start to, a lot of things can come after that. So let's just use a number. Let's say your customer acquisition cost is $500. And that customer acquisition cost will include all your outbound spend, wages for
Yeah.
BD teams, that sort of stuff, right? So when you understand that, you can start to say, well, how do I need to resource this? So if it's only $500, maybe I should additionally resource this such that I can accelerate my growth with more customer acquisition. However, the other data point that you want to understand is the efficiency of your customer acquisition. What's your cost of growth? So if you have, customer acquisition cost of $500, but a cost of growth that is, costing you like 50 cents on the dollar, then you only have a certain amount of room until it's like basically bumping up against break even and there's no point. So you have to figure out how efficient your cost of growth is. However, all that said and done, traditional B2Bs and most businesses have not say recurring revenue, such as like subscription based, but reoccurring revenue. So what is your cost of retention? And how much are you resourcing that? And how much is that book of business expanding? So you look at those are the basic building blocks that you need to understand. Your cost of growth, cost of retention, customer acquisition cost, customer retention cost, and then you get into some more of the volume metrics and conversion rates needed to actually grow your business. And that's the fundamentals that you need. You get that in place, and only then, when you understand that, can you build an effective revenue model. And that's what I mean by having data in place to drive your business.
That's really good. And I don't hear as many people talk about like client acquisition as we probably should. So that's an excellent answer. I appreciate that. So you even though you're outdoorsy, it's very obvious you're very detail oriented. Like you're that's where the business mind comes from, the almost OCD level of organization. So although the outdoorsy side of you probably is not as AI driven, the business side of you seems like it is. So what are some of your best uses for AI right now in your business? A quick break before we get to that next answer, because I know that answer is going to be brilliant, which is why I chose this moment to interrupt. If you love what you're seeing and you want to run your business off of warm marketing referrals, visit our website, livelocalwarmmarketing.com. It's got valuable resources, office hours, memberships, the book, an array of resources to help you get rid of cold calls, cold leads, door knocking, and run a business you can be proud of through referrals and warm marketing. Now, back to the show.
All right. So AI, it's really interesting. You've all heard like, you're not going to be replaced by AI. You're going to be replaced by somebody that's using AI. And we've heard that. But really what it comes down to, AI, first and foremost, AI, it feeds on the data that it's fed, right? So you have to have the data model in place. So that's the first thing, is get your data, get it consolidated, and then you can leverage a variety of tools to actually help you interpret that data more effectively and get outputs from it. So, what is the systems, or my favorite AI strategy? Like, I'm just going to work on sales. So what happens when I get a discovery call? So the first thing I do is I do old school Google the person, but I go onto LinkedIn, look at them. Humanic AI gives me a profile of the individual. I can then actually throw their website and a bunch of stuff into ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever and get some input on it. I can take the form they filled out and put that together and have a pretty good talking track of what's going to happen in the discovery of what they're actually looking for. So I use AI to help me do the prep for discovery, which used to take sometimes, I'd take 45 minutes poking around, doing all that kind of stuff. I can prep now in like, 5 to 10 and be just as good, if not better. And then also understand how I have to change, say, my talking style to match the cadence of what the potential prospect wants to hear. And AI gives me all that sort of stuff. When you're in the meeting, of course, you're recording it. And then the recording allows for the sales recap. But again, you can then send that sales recap with a format, with a prompt, and adjust it. It goes directly into my CRM, that recap. So it's all there. That data continues to feed. And if you have a series of discovery calls, all that kind of stuff, you can then look at all the recaps and then ask AI what should be the next step. Then you get that next step. It gets built into your playbooks, and away you go. Now, that's just what we do on the discovery side. My team, when it actually lands, takes all that information, helps build the brief and give background understanding as to what's going to be occurring, right? And then when we get into the delivery, we're using AI to help us with delivery as well. And we're getting to the point where we're using agents to actually systemize this. And so take my call and then start to build out what the proposal next step would be, so I don't have to do that. And of course, you've got humans to oversight on it with expert judgment, but it really is a tool for acceleration and insights. And we're still at the point where if you're not using AI yet, don't just play around with it. You can't break it.
Yeah.
Get the tools, start doing it, but start thinking about how you can speed up. So AI has given me back a minimum of about 10 hours a week because
That's
of the
amazing.
amount of conversations I have that need for a proper sales process. They all need a recap. So I was, writing notes, typing this all out, all this kind of stuff, say 2.5 years ago. And now I have all that additional time every week to focus on the business. And so that's what I would say with AI at this point in
That's
time.
good.
Understand how you're going to capture the data and how you're going to leverage that data to do the next step.
And the reflection part of it too, like it's helping you summarize. Yeah, that's
Oh,
great use of it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit on the marketing side of it. We're going to talk about a cold marketing strategy that's working for you right now, and then after that, a warm marketing strategy that's working for you right now. Let's try those things.
Well, cold marketing strategies are tough. I mean, you can try to capture intent in the marketplace when people are searching. So I always recommend doing that, so that you try to capture that intent because it's out there. Cold outreach eventually does work at volume as long
Yeah.
as you understand your prospect and have a really good target account list created, and then individualize the message. But what I gotta say is when you put all that together and say you're doing that and they're warmed up and they're warmed up in a
Yeah.
variety of ways, could be a first touch or an invitation to something, or it could be they're exposed to your ads or they're exposed to your social presence and your thought leadership. They're going to respond more effectively to what you're putting out there in the world. So I prefer to build as much of a warm list as possible and work that warm list as opposed to a pure cold list. I mean, we've all heard that, there's, of the 100% buyers, 95 are not in market, only 5% are in market. Okay, great. So when you put that on cold and they don't know you and you're doing outreach, it gets pretty thin soup when you're actually doing a lot of cold outreach. So try to build warm prospect lists through building awareness and how you have to do awareness with your ICP. That it might be trade shows, it might be direct mail, it might be billboards. There's a variety of ways that you can warm up your audience. But that's what I would prefer is warm over cold, and that's not what I prefer. That's what we prefer is warm over cold.
Well, that comes back to your first answer too, when you talked about the idea of client retention costs, right? When you're talking to client retention costs, warm has to be way smaller of a budget than a cold. Would I be
Totally.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
when you're doing account management appropriately and have account management plans, I don't even consider those. Those are your clients. Wrap your arms around them and hold on to them and support them and grow with them, and figure out how to do expansion. But when it comes to net new client acquisition, I prefer to actually have a warm prospect as opposed to a completely cold one. Yeah.
So let me ask one more follow-up because I need to know now. So you gave a lot of examples of types of, you said billboards or what. How do you help them decide what's working, what's not working?
So for clients, if we're working on clients,
yeah.
what would work for clients? You do deep customer understanding first. First and foremost is it is shocking, and we have research to back this up. So we do research on go-to-market readiness, and so we get organizations to come and participate in our research study, and then they get a go-to-market readiness score that then shows them a bunch of quick wins that they can focus on. So my comments right now are completely research backed, and we've got a database where we have the stats on this. And shockingly, not enough companies that are in the traditional B2B space really understand their ideal client. They get what they get, and they don't get upset. And as opposed to like niching down and focusing on something that they can really, really win with. And so when you get that deep customer understanding, you will know the water coolers that they hang out with. You will know that, hey, this industry conference is really good for us to sponsor or to be at so that we can become known. This is a room you want to be in for networking. This is what they're looking for. So you can actually have some digital marketing to show up when they're searching that or that whatever that might be. There might be, like when you look at certain types of manufacturing, there's clusters of manufacturing. So, hey, go work that industrial section of the city because that's where our clients are, and do some door-to-door knocking. old techniques are still like, there's still old gold out there.
Yeah,
I
agree.
would say, like, if you want to warm up your client, have something of value and direct mail them. And if you've got a good target account list, that, like, nobody does that anymore. So you want to get
Yeah.
their attention, actually take the time to send them a piece, and they'd be like, oh, what is this? And then reach out to them right after you provided some value. So we do those kind of things with our clients, but it really comes down to understanding what your customer is and how to reach them. And so you start with that first, and then you come up with the various different strategies and channels in which you can reach those customers.
That's very good. That's awesome. Lots of data and a lot of information here in this conversation. I'm gonna call it audible from this next question because based on your background, and I don't have many people that have ever summited and hiked and done these things. So the audible is going to be, talk to us about a bit of marketing advice that you've been given that you now follow.
Well, so I've always been gifted with leading sales and marketing teams at the same time. It wasn't in isolation. And so before the title of chief revenue officer was, the thing, I was, I guess the title that I had closest to it was like executive vice president or something like that. So I had sales teams and marketing departments leading me, or me leading them. Sorry. So, I think back to the fundamental that you have to provide to your customer is some sort of offer of value. And it was an old sales guy that had been around for forever, right? And I'm like, hey, we gotta increase scale. We gotta get our revenues up. We're slagging. And he's like, well, what are we offering them? Like, what are we offering them? We got nothing of value to offer them. Like, would you buy something right now? It's like, like commodity prices are depressed. We've got all this inventory that's overpriced. Like, would you, like, what's our offer? Right. And at the end of the day, that simple wisdom has stuck with me, for decades, that nothing works unless you have an offer of value for your end customer. So I always, and that's, in the sales and marketing lens, the whole revenue team lens, what is your offer? How does that provide value? How does that solve for a pain point or help them grow whatever it is that they need to grow? Yeah. And so it all comes back down to that. If you don't have a good offer figured out, nothing else matters.
So when you sit down with clients, how do you determine what the offer is going to be? Because there's a lot of budgetary concerns. There's lots of inventory concerns. There's lots of variables in that. How do you help them decide that?
Well, that's a great question, and it is complex and different on a per industry basis. But I'll tell you this: most of them don't have an offer. They don't have anything of value, right? And so it's pretty interesting. You let them talk, and then you deconstruct what they say. So I've heard this many times. Well, hey, if we get a new dealer, like a channel partner. If this new dealer would just do what we tell them to do, if they would follow all our steps, they would sell the first load, no problem. The first load in, no problem, of inventory. I'm like, oh, really? Okay. So if they did everything you asked them to do, you're guaranteeing that first load in of inventory will sell within how long? 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? They're like, oh, guaranteed in 12 months. Not a problem. I go, so essentially you're giving a guarantee that there's no risk here. And they're like, if they just did what we said that we want them to do, that would work. I'm like, okay, make that part of your offer. Eliminate the risk. And it's interesting. They think about it, because this is a conversation I've had many times, because you get companies that are dialed in and they have, product knowledge, training, all that sort of stuff, right? And going, if the dealer would just do what we ask them to do, there'd be no problem, right? I'm like, well, make that part of your offer when you're bringing them on. Put that guarantee in there, remove that risk, because the risk is like, listen, if you're loading in 150 grand of inventory, that's tying up your line of credit or whatever it might be. There's a bit of risk. Remove that risk. And as long as they do A, B, C, D, E, F, G kind of thing, and make that part of your offer. And it's pretty powerful when that gets put into place, if you have the faith in your product knowledge, your product, the marketing that you do for your network, that sort of stuff, right, as a manufacturer. But so the first thing is actually define an offer that removes risk for people to do business with you, and basically try to work backwards, eliminate the barriers. How can we eliminate barriers? And that has to be in your offer.
That's good. Eliminating the risk, pain points, offering value. Such classics. These are classics, and we're just going over the classics here. This is great. Talk to us a little bit about, and you've got quite a background. You've been through a lot of different things, but a lot of business owners and a lot of entrepreneurs have an issue with confidence. Sometimes we have this phrase that's been going around with the imposter syndrome. What kind of conversation would you have with them in regards to this imposter syndrome, in regards to their confidence? What kind of things would you tell them?
Well, I think most people have a challenge with confidence because they're either afraid of making a mistake, which then creates some paralysis, and then they don't know what to do next. If you have a system to run your business that allows you to dive into the issues you're facing as a team, that gives you confidence as a leader. When your team helps solve it with you together, and then you feel like you have the best decision and the best outcome that you create, and then you go and execute it. And it might not be right, it might not work, but then you come back to the drawing board and you do it again. So I think the lack of confidence comes from being afraid to make a mistake, but also not knowing what to do. And if you have a system that you're following that guides you as to how you should be running your business, and we use the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we encourage our clients to do that, and we support that with the various different revenue plans and stuff that we create. We leverage ports of EOS for them, but it gives a framework on how they can tackle these decisions and issues. Also, when it comes to creating a plan and reaching goals, we're going to grow 30% is just a hope. It's a hope cast. But when you break it down with a mathematical model, and then you can litmus test it and say, geez, we need to acquire 32 net new clients in order to hit our goals. Okay, well, our goal is probably unrealistic. Instead of beating ourselves up and, beating down our confidence, actually, what is reality? Figure out reality mathematically and then do it. And that's how you build confidence, is by executing and getting a few wins, and then working with your team so you feel supported.
So it sounds like, though, you start with a goal. It even said we're going to grow 30%. You start with that goal, and then the system backs up the goal, and then you use your data. And as people are doing these things and taking these steps, the confidence, you don't have time not to be confident because you're following the plan. Is that a good summation?
Yeah, the confidence grows from results, right? But you have to have realistic results and a system to support you in getting there.
Do you ever do I always ask this question too when I can. Do you ever have like a big audacious goal, like something you like, there's no way we're going to do this? Do you ever set those up for yourself as well? I mean, you climb mountains, man. I mean, there's got to be some big audacious goals in here somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I used to set those 10-year horizon goals. And I still kind of do, but I've gotten away from that and more looking near term. What's my 1 year? What's my 3 year? And then I have a vision, like what's your vision of where you want to go and your passion. And as long as I'm executing on those two things, the big, hairy, audacious goal doesn't matter. I mean, for me, providing a great culture and workplace for my team so that we can serve our clients and be happy and healthy and all that kind of stuff. That's the big, audacious goal, is just to continue to grow this system. So I'm at a point in my career where I'm not chasing wealth goals, none of that kind of stuff. I mean, I've got the comfort level where I don't need that. So it might be, unfair of me to say that kind of stuff, but that's where I'm at. This is a passion to help businesses improve and help leaders improve. And that's kind of like, how many of those can we serve? So we do set that about how we support revenue creation for our clients as our big, hairy, audacious goal. But more, it's about the passion day to day.
Got it. That makes sense. That's a good answer. I like that. All right, before we finish out and talk about your business, we are going to talk about burnout, because we did the imposter syndrome, which seems to be a trend, and now we're talking about burnout, which also seems to be a trend, where lots of people can do, especially with AI, they think they can handle all the elements, all the aspects, team or no team. People are just doing too many things. How do you help your team avoid the burnout and get some rest, recharging?
Well, first, we have a sacred rule where people are only scheduled for work with a full 5-day work week of 37 and a half hours. That's it. That's sacred. And so we manage workloads really, really tightly to make sure that people aren't over capacity and have some space to be able to like decompress a little bit. So that's one of the things we do with our team. We have check-ins with the team on a regular basis, just to see how they're doing, that sort of stuff. But really, it's about managing the capacity, managing the workload, and then continual check-ins to validate that everybody's doing okay. The interesting thing is you could be at, say, 90% capacity. So say you got 10% extra capacity, but burnout can occur with a mental workload that's occurring if
Yep.
you're having to jump between all these different projects and different clients. So that's like kind of like a tricky one that you have to watch for. And so we're trying to be aware of that as to how much different things people are juggling to manage potential burnout. So that's what we do with the team. In general, though, like you have to make sure that people are getting enough sleep, that they have
Mhm.
balance in their life, that they're supported,
Yeah.
that they don't feel like hey, I need to take my kids to the dentist, and that's going to be they're going to be punished for that. So we also have flex time, which allows people to live their life, because we believe that you don't have a professional life and a personal life. You have one life, and you have to make it
Yeah, that's
work.
true.
And we want to
Very
support
good.
the whole person. And so to that, we have a wellness spending account so people can buy gym equipment or buy gym memberships or whatever it might be.
That's good.
Again, because we know that if they're healthy and happy, they're going to be more high performing and that sort of thing, and bring their best foot forward for our clients. So we do a fair amount on that. And even though we're a remote team, we gather once a year. We have monthly fun hours, stuff like that, just to continue to connect. So.
Oh, that's really good. That's awesome. All right. So as we wrap up, you have to do the outro where we talk specifically about your business and where people can get a hold of you to set up a meeting or get more information.
Right. Okay. So, Roadmap Agency, our goal is to help businesses reach their next level. And specifically, we build systems to achieve 2x growth for traditional B2B firms. And that's manufacturer, professional service firms, that sort of stuff. And within a realistic time frame of 3 to 5 years. So that would be 20% compounded growth for 5 years, which if you read Good to Great, that's top shelf, right?
Yeah.
And so we have validated that with research, or research back with our go-to-market readiness index. So if you want to learn more about this stuff, you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm very prolific on LinkedIn, post daily. You can also go to my podcast, the Driving Growth Podcast, or you can go to roadmapagency.com and you can participate in the research. There's the go-to-market readiness index, apply, and you'll get surveyed. You'll get a researcher that takes you through everything. And then you get a report in which you walk through and explain the results too. So it's quite comprehensive. We've been doing it now for about 8 months, and this is going to be a continued passion that we're going to do forevermore, because we're providing so much value to the marketplace with providing those results to help them figure out what they should focus on to grow. Yeah, that's how you get a hold of us.
That is awesome. This is a great conversation. Such a unique perspective on things and the mountain climbing and the hard work it's great. So I'm already friends with you on LinkedIn. We're already there, and I'm already gonna follow all your stuff. And then I'm going to start tuning into the podcast. I love hearing other folks that have been on the show and tuning into their podcast as well. And I would say the audience, please do the same. Hop in there. You see all the information, the data, the background, the uniqueness is something definitely worth your time. And so I strongly advise you do it. So Steve, we thank you for your time and for your help today.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. It was great.
And if authentic, practical marketing resonates with you, be sure to visit livelocalwarmmarketing.com and learn to grow your business on warm marketing referrals.